Hello. Welcome back in to another segment of Night Toma Radio. NTR. I can't get tired of that name. But yeah, today we're gonna be talking about something that I may or may not have been pretty obsessed with. I'm not going to lie, I am not much of a weeb, despite being an anime girl. The main reason isn't because I hate that kind of media or because I don't like anime or manga. I think it's just something that I've slowly grown out of. And you guys can make fun of me and say that that's not true, but this is just my personal take on how I consume anime, manga, Japanese media nowadays compared to how I was around middle school. Yeah, because I was a huge weeb in middle school. That was probably the peak of my weeb slash otaku phase. And honestly, it fits in with the chuuni trope where, it's like an anime trope, the chuuni trope, where essentially when you're in middle school, that's when you're really starting to feel a bunch of emotions and just going kind of cuckoo crazy. So you start to be a little melodramatic for no reason, And at the time, I thought that I was so freaking cool for watching so much anime, for knowing so much about anime, for watching so many series, for watching things right when they came out, for being up to date with like anime news and things like that. It was so interesting now that I'm looking back at it, because it's like, okay, why is that why is that so cool to me? I'm not so sure. But yeah, I won't deny that I did have a really big huge phase. I will say that it's kind of simmered down a lot since. I will say that, I do like certain anime series now. I do check out certain ones every once in a while and I catch up with them when I have time. But I think the main thing is just the fact that there's a lot of things that I'm trying to focus on now and a lot of things that I personally am interested in. One of them being streaming. I just love streaming so much. I have tons of fun doing it. So I think I actually end up putting a lot of time into streaming, and in turn a lot of time into music, recording, production, things like that. Not to mention art, design, and planning. That all kind of comes full circle and ties together just to form the one word of being a streamer slash VTuber. And it's because of that I feel like I just don't have a ton of time on my hands, which could be incorrect, but that's just how I personally feel. But I don't have a ton of time to commit to consuming media consistently, because if you're starting up an anime series, it's not like a movie where you can just watch one movie and you're one and done. It's not like a book where you read it and you're one and done. But when you start an anime series, it's like a whole new story, whole new story that if you end up liking, you will have to, I guess, technically commit to until the end of the story, or until you no longer like the story enough to continue it, which kind of sounds scary to me. It's just a big commitment, in my opinion. I will say, one of the series that I have been obsessed with in recent months is Jujutsu Kaisen. It's an anime manga series that centers around high schoolers that enroll into this technical school where they use their abilities to fight against cursed spirits that are formed from negative energy from, regular people. I don't think that the concept itself is super unique. It's like the typical anime series where it's shonen. The main character is this guy that's like happy-go-lucky. He's loud. He's got a bit of trauma, because nowadays, who doesn't really? Like, who doesn't? But he's got a bit of trauma, and there's another guy in the trio that's kind of like quiet and keeps to himself, and he's a little bit of an edgelord. And then there's the token like female character in the trio, and then they're like fighting against evil. There's like some really really overpowered things going on. There's an overpowered teacher that is a mentor figure for them essentially. I think that Jujutsu Kaisen takes a lot of references and a lot of like, there's a lot of nods to many other series, which I don't think is a bad thing in any way, shape, or form. I do like the series, let me put that out there. And by the way, everything that I'm saying from here on out is just my personal opinion. But I don't think that the concept of the series itself is too far-fetched or too unique, you know? Like, main character guy gets traumatized and now has a source of motivation to do better, and then he gets dragged into this world of expectations and things that he has to follow. He suddenly has a bunch of responsibilities on him. Oh no, what will he do? Fight more monsters. I don't know, I just think it's a very common trope, and it's just like the way that a lot of stories generally progress, which is not a bad thing. I really really like it though. I just think it's a lot of fun. I think it's interesting how the character dynamics are between certain characters. I like how there's like a lot of nuances that are in between the lines if you think about it. But then again, I think at that point you're kind of crossing into the barrier of what could be considered delusion and not exactly canon. But that's just my 2 cents. I think that there's quite a lot of stuff in media that sometimes requires a more in-depth reading and just like comprehension and interpretation. There's also times where it's a little bit too much, like that one example that everyone and their freaking mom knows, where, you know, someone's in a room and the curtains are blue and it signifies like the sorrows of the character after losing their loved one or something, you know, like I think that's a little too crazy. That's a little insane unless it's backed up by a certain other thing that talks about the color blue specifically in the series maybe. But I do think there's a lot of really interesting nods to religion and other series in Jujutsu Kaisen that I really 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 like. I am going to be talking about some events involving spoilers, so if you guys are not caught up with the manga, just proceed with caution. I will try not to like completely spoil, but there are certain events that just absolutely can't be skimmed over, you know? Like there's certain characters and things that happen to said characters that I can't really beat around the bush about it, because it's happened and I'm sad about it, but it has definitely happened, you know? But yeah, we're gonna be talking about Jujutsu Kaisen. We're gonna be talking about basically what I think is going to be happening next, my first initial predictions and why they might have been wrong and things like that. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoy. First of all, I am delusional and I simply want to see my favorite characters be happy. I know that's not the way to write a very good story, okay? By the way, spoiler alert, spoiler alert, spoiler alert. This is your last warning because I'm just gonna start like spouting about spoilers in 3, 2, and 1. But essentially, I think that it'd be best in my heart, okay? In my heart, I think I'd be happiest if I could see all of my favorite characters happy together and living just a mundane life. I do think that's a bit of a cheap ending because it would remind me of, what is that one series? Tokyo Revengers. Because that series, I am not a huge fan of. The whole premise is that the main character, Takemichi, is, is that his name? I think that's his name. It's the blonde main character. But essentially, he's trying to save one character, and in trying to do so, he triggers like a whole sequence of events, and he gains the power to travel back into the past. But every time he changes something, another thing changes or another thing happens, and he's basically just trying to save people in order to save the ultimate goal that he has, which was to save this girl that he liked. And it just keeps spiraling. It just spirals and spirals and spirals until he saves everyone at the end, which I think is such a cheap cop-out ending, because the villains don't become the villains, the bad guys become good guys, everyone is saved and everyone is happy, which is cool. But this all happens in like potential timelines, you know, because Takemichi is skipping around different timelines in order to achieve this outcome where everyone is happy. So it kind of defeats the entire purpose of the story, because it feels as if any character development that was made between the characters is lost, because the only outcome that matters is the one in the end where everyone is happy and healthy and smiling. That's, I don't know how I feel about that. I think it's all right. I think an ending like that would also be pretty similar to Demon Slayer's ending, Kimetsu no Yaiba. Because in that one, basically, I think the pacing near the end was kind of insane, but they defeat the bad guys, a lot of people die, and then they just live until old age now that there are no more demons, and then they die, and there's like a scene with a reincarnation of the main cast, which I think is all right of an ending. I think it's a happy ending, or the happiest ending that would be possible given all the other events in the story. And I do like that it shows the reincarnation of the characters instead of just straight up saying that like, oh, these characters are happy and married now, and these characters are happy and married now, which is what happens. But I think the option of just seeing them reincarnated further down the line in the future is kind of neat, and not as crazy of an ending as Tokyo Revengers. I think that if Jujutsu Kaisen were to take this kind of route in the end, I would be very surprised. I'd be happy about my characters being happy. I'm not sure if I would be happy with the progression of the story. Just because I think the entire story has a lot of Buddhist references, and it has a lot of references to just cycles of rebirth and karma, just the karmic cycle, and that's shown through, well, one, a lot of the characters use hand signs, and those have Buddhist references. There are some demons or characters that have their names as Buddhist references. There's a lot of other tiny nods to Buddhism that I think are pretty neat in Jujutsu Kaisen. And I think because of that cycle of rebirth and enlightenment and things like that, I guess it is technically possible to have like a reincarnation scene at the end of Jujutsu Kaisen showing all the characters happy together. But based on the way the story has been going and how Akutami Sensei has been kind of going crazy with the manga, I'm not so sure that we'll have a happy ending, truthfully. I think that JJK is going to have a sad ending for our main character Yuji, if we're going to be completely honest. But I would prefer if they were all happy together and smiling, and like any criminal became a good person, and like the curses were reborn as nice people. I think that'd be kind of cute. Is it going to happen? No. Am I delusional? Yes. The question then comes in where I have to ask where this Jujutsu Kaisen delusion and obsession even came from. Because Jujutsu Kaisen isn't like a new series. It's gotten a lot of hype recently because of the newest season, and then now the Culling Games arc that's going to be adapted in a few years from now. But it's definitely not by any means a super new series. And I'd actually watched maybe an episode or two of it before a couple months ago. And I thought that it was just alright because of the plot and how it seemed kind of similar to a lot of other shonen plots. And the reason why I ultimately started watching Jujutsu Kaisen, it's literally just because of this one Twitter post. There's this Twitter post that I saw on my feed, and you know, sometimes Twitter is a little crazy with it. And essentially, there was this Twitter post of a fangirl saying that, like, oh, XYZ is happening in Jujutsu Kaisen, and I think that this character is in love with this character, and I ship them, and I really, really want them to be happy. And if they're not happy together, I think that the world is a lie and that love isn't real. And I was like, okay, seems like your typical Fujoshi that likes BL, likes yaoi, and likes shipping two guys together at work here. Not my first rodeo. I used to be a really, really big Fujoshi. I used to really, really like yaoi when I was a huge weeb. And I would ship basically any male character with any other male character just because they looked nice or because I thought their character interactions were kind of interesting. And that's the case for this one volleyball anime series called Haikyuu, where basically it's like a slice of life anime series with a bunch of high school guys, and they all, they're all on different teams, and they go and play games against each other essentially. And I think there were so many like obvious pairings in that series, like the main character with the quieter second main character, and then there's the older like senpai figure with like the older mom like mother like senpai figure, and then there's like the super tall guy that's like quiet and meek, and then there's like the short guy that's really loud and kind of all over the place. So there's just a bunch of different pairings in Haikyuu. And I was like, you know what, these are cute character interactions. Do I think that they're actually shipped together legitimately in the series? No. I just think that they're like best friends, maybe they're really close friends. But do I still think they're cute together? Do I like their character interactions? Yes, you know. I think there's a lot of cases where people ship two characters together just because they look cute together or because they seem like they would be a good match, but canonically it doesn't really make sense. It's like how people will ship, let's see, like Sasuke and Naruto. That was such a huge ship. It was like every single girl's first yaoi BL ship. Just because, ooh, funny, loud guy chases after quiet, edgy boy and refuses to let go of him. Which, you know, if I can say this, I do think that's a little silly. That's a little fruity. I'm not gonna lie. Ally, by the way, ally. It's a little fruity. Ally. But I don't think necessarily that they are in a relationship with one another. I think that they have a really close bond, but I don't think that they're written queer coded enough for them to have enough canonic like moments for them to be gay, you know? Like, there's this one anime series, Yuri on Ice, which is an ice skating anime, and it went like crazy when it first came out because it's of this one Japanese skater who meets a Russian skater, and he's kind of like the star. He's the best guy ever, and he decides to train Yuri, and then they kiss, and they have like a whole thing together, and Yuri is like performing and doing his best trying to impress the other guy. And, you know, that you can't argue against. They are clearly a little fruity. They are not even just a little fruity. They are the whole fruit basket. They are an edible arrangement, you know? So when I started reading this Twitter thread of this one girl talking about two characters in Jujutsu Kaisen being gay for each other, I figured it was probably not a case like Yuri on Ice. And it was a case like, oh, maybe it's like Sasuke and Naruto, or maybe it's just that the characters are cute together. So I started reading through the thread, and I thought it was really, really interesting, just because as I was reading through it, I felt that a lot of the points she had were really, really, really interesting. You know, usually when people ship two characters together in a lot of shonen or just series in general, it's just because, oh, guy number one is hot, guy number two is hot, and that's why I ship them together. But there were a lot of really, really interesting things that were brought up in this like relationship between the two characters. And because of that, I thought, you know, maybe this has some substance. I'm gonna go check it out, and I want to see if this girl is absolutely delusional or if she actually is on to something. Let me hydrate real quick. Okay. But basically, I started reading some of the manga, I started watching some of the anime clips that would come up on my feed, and I just have to say, like, Mappa, not the studio itself, but the animators did such an amazing job at adapting the series. I don't think there's been a single moment where I've thought that maybe this adaptation is not very good. I've thought that this adaptation has been absolutely phenomenal. Um, 07 to all the animators at Mappa, because I hope that they can rest and see their family soon. But knowing the scheduled anime releases that are coming up, I'm not sure if that's the case. So I really, really do hope that they can get some rest or get the treatment that they deserve. But I will say that the anime series is animated really, really well. There's some amazing animators that work on it. There's an absolutely insane amount of cuts, to the point where almost every single episode in the most recent season is just phenomenal. It's so crazy. Of course, there are certain moments where it's more mundane, but during the action scenes, I would 100% say that the staff went above and beyond and definitely did the adaptation justice. It's so freaking good. And I was looking through it and I was like, you know what? These fangirls, they have, like, they have something. I'm not sure what it is, but I will say that it seems like they're onto something. Like, I can kind of see the references, but that's not what we're here to talk about today. You know, we're just going to be talking about Jujutsu Kaisen and what I think of the series in general, not exactly what characters I ship with one another in Jujutsu Kaisen. That can be a whole nother story. That's gonna be a whole nother thing. Oh man. But basically, we're gonna get back into spoilers now, so if that's something that you are mindful of, please consider that. We're gonna be talking about some manga spoilers right now, so anime only is not going to be caught up for this. In 3, 2, and 1. But essentially, originally I was thinking that there's this one post from quite a while back. It's from an interview that Akutami Sensei did, where Akutami Sensei basically says that their plan for the end of Jujutsu Kaisen is that the main cast, Megumi, the spiky guy, Yuji, the funny pink main character, Nobara, the girl, and then Gojo, out of the 4, at the end of Jujutsu Kaisen, either one will die and the rest will live, or all will die except for one. And because of that statement, of course, there are possibilities that that could have been a bluff, or maybe the story might have changed halfway along and that's no longer true. But assuming that this is still the case, and that the ending of Jujutsu Kaisen is already planned, and that we're leading everything towards this one conclusion, I do want to say that my prediction is that Yuji is going to be the one that dies. I think that the main character of Jujutsu Kaisen himself is going to be the one that ends up dying in the series at the end. Which sounds crazy. You don't normally get that. Usually it's all about the main characters prevailing and achieving their dreams and being happy. But I think one thing about Jujutsu Kaisen that I liked for a little bit recently, I do not like very much because all my favorite characters are dropping like flies. But I think it's interesting how Akutami Sensei is not scared of just like absolutely removing a character from a story, just deleting them off the page, just ending their journey short for no reason. because that's supposed to be normal in the Jujutsu world, and you're not supposed to have time to mourn for the loss of these characters. I think it's really interesting because a lot of mangakas would save certain characters and they would keep certain characters just because they know that they're fan favorites and things like that. But Akutami Sensei does not have that in any way, shape, or form whatsoever, which I think is super, super interesting. I feel like that's the case with a lot of modern shonen series. One of them being Chainsaw Man, because the main character for that cannot catch a break. I feel really, really bad for him because he is always suffering, or he's always like being groomed, for lack of a better word. He is always suffering or being groomed by another person, and I feel really, really bad for Denji from Chainsaw Man. And I feel like Yuji is kind of having that same experience, which sucks for him. Makes me really sad when it comes to the story, but will it result in a good story overall? I don't know, we'll see. I do think that Yuji is going to die at the end of the series, and that Gojo, Nobara, and Megumi are going to be alive. I think that's a huge stretch. That is assuming that Akutami Sensei was right when he said that 3 of them would live and 1 would die. This is because I feel like if everyone dies except Yuji, it doesn't really make sense in the grand scheme of things, because Yuji's entire purpose as a character, and the whole reason why Jujutsu Kaisen, the series, starts to follow him as the main character, is because he goes out of the ordinary. He breaks the chains of fate and destiny, essentially, and he eats the cursed item of Sukuna's finger, that then gives him the power of, like, seeing cursed energy, using cursed energy. He's currently the vessel for Sukuna and things like that. His life would not have taken that direction in any way whatsoever if he had not consumed the finger, and immediately after he does so, the higher-ups at Jujutsu Tech are saying that they want Yuji executed. They're asking for his immediate execution, and they just don't want him to be there because he is someone that's gone out of the ordinary. He's not a part of what fate has decided for, he just breaks any expectations regarding fate and destiny because he's the anomaly. He's not supposed to be there. And when he sees his grandpa's last words to Yuji are that he should save as many people as he can, and then die surrounded by people that he loves and loves him, so that he's no longer alone. Which, honestly, I think is a huge death flag. One thing I've come to know since being like an insane theorist during my weeb days is just that there's a lot of moments where something seems really mundane and it actually is not. There's usually some meaning or intention placed behind dialogue or actions in a story. Like, for example, in movies, characters won't cough unless they're supposed to be coughing. Characters won't sneeze unless they're supposed to be sneezing. If they're having, like, just an everyday normal conversation, yeah, it might not have too much meaning, but there's a reason why that conversation is there in the first place. It wasn't just there for the sake of being there, for the most part, unless it's filler, But I do think that Yuji's grandpa saying these words to him in a way kind of foretell what's going to be his destiny, because there's kind of a history of there being just curses that develop as a power, as a result of words. One example being in Yuta, who's like a special grade curse sorcerer, and he basically curses his childhood friend Rika into becoming a cursed spirit, or a cursed monster, essentially, because he really, really just does not want to accept the fact that she's died and that he's seen her die in front of his eyes. And that's how one form of the curse manifests, and it's actually because of Yuta's intense love for him. You could argue that Geto actually comes back and reemerges as Kenjaku because of a curse as well. Because at the end of Geto's life, essentially, during Jujutsu Kaisen 0, the movie, Gojo says some words to Geto as he's about to end his life, and Geto just starts laughing. He blushes a little bit, and he says that, you know, you should have at least cursed me a little bit. And the words that Gojo tells him are not confirmed. They're always censored, or they're just like a blank line, blank bubble. No one knows what the lines are exactly. But, you know, a lot of people theorize that, you know, it's gotta be something meaningful. It's gotta be something pretty emotional and heavy-hitting, because there's notes saying that it was something that he had never said before. So, the theory that I have is just that he has this sort of love, whether or not it's platonic or familial or just a soulmate, homie kind of love. He has so much love and emotions towards Geto that he kind of indirectly ends up cursing him into meeting him again, which is what happens when Kenjaku takes over Geto's body and catches Gojo off guard while pretending to be Geto. And because of the power of words that we can see in these two examples, and how Gojo talks about love, and how love is just the most cursed, the most twisted and sick curse of them all, especially with Sukuna's battle in the recent manga, and how they talk about love, the concept of love, Sukuna's battle with Yorozu, his battle with Jogo, with Gojo, with basically every single person that he interacts with. Sukuna touches upon the concept of love and teaches them the meaning of love, or at least shares his interpretation of love, which I think is a really interesting thing. And I guess we could interpret Yuji's grandpa's last words to him as a form of love as well, that indirectly end up cursing him. Which is why I think Yuji is going to die at the end of the series, considering that he thinks of himself as a cog in the wheel. He isn't someone that really behaves selfishly. He thinks about others, he works for the team and for the benefit of others, because, you know, he's trying to save as many people as possible, and he just wants to be a good guy. He wants to be a good guy. He's not selfish. He doesn't think of other people, or he doesn't think of himself when he thinks of other people, which is proven when Sukuna is able to rip off Yuji's finger and then force feed it to Megumi, because he doesn't value himself as a person in any way, shape, or form whatsoever, which allows Sukuna to find a loophole in their binding vow. Let me hydrate real quick. I just think that Yuji as a character seems pretty boring, which is noted by a lot of people and even some characters. I mean, we're at what appears to be close to, if not the finale of the series. You know, the entire series has been leading up to the fight with Kenjaku, the fight with Sukuna, and they're doing that right now. And yet, Yuji still hasn't shown off his own curse technique. He's only ever used his fists, which in itself is very cool. But it still feels like something is lacking in comparison with him and all these other characters, which have just insane, super crazy, super fun techniques and abilities. And I just think that there's way too many death flags for Yuji. and that just means that he's not gonna make it out alive. He is supposed to save as many people as possible before dying, and then Megumi says the words, "Start by saving me." And knowing Yuji's, like, you know, sacrificial, insane tendencies, I don't think it's a stretch to say that he is probably going to end up doing something that, you know, ends up with him being the sacrifice or the scapegoat and saving Megumi and all the others instead. I will say that at this given point in the manga, Gojo has been split in half. Nobara has been missing for a really long time, and honestly, I just want to assume that she is, like, gone. I want to assume that she's passed away because it's been so long in the series. But I'm just holding out hope because, one, I'm delusional and a Nobara fangirl. Two, it wouldn't fit my theory of everyone living and Yuji dying if Nobara's also dead. So because of that theory, and because I'm trying to adhere to that theory, I just have to assume that she's alive. Especially because I just think that her skill set is really interesting. Her skill set can target the soul, so I feel like it'd be really, really useful if she were to come back. I'm not super hopeful, but in the event that she does come back, I'd be really surprised. Gojo, on the other hand, I do think 100% he has to come back. I think that it would help with the story overall. Just because his death scene as is just him reminiscing about the past and about him reflecting on his fight with Sukuna. And although that's, like, pretty cool, he does get to be reunited with all of his friends that he was happiest with during his high school days. I feel like he's grown a lot as a teacher, and that alone should go to prove that maybe during his last moments he should be worried about his students, or maybe he should be thinking about them instead of just, you know, fooling around and having fun. Although that is kind of a bittersweet ending in its own way. The fact that he's never been able to relax and he finally is able to with his friends, that is very, very sweet. But I'm just hoping, you know, I'm hoping that he's gonna come back. Am I crazy? Maybe. Crazy? I was crazy once. It locked me in a rubber room with rats, and rats make me crazy. But yeah, I think he's going to come back. There's quite a few Buddhist references as to why I think he will. There's what is it called? There's the fact that Gojo is used as a parallel of Buddha during his first enlightenment versus Toji, when Toji basically almost kills Gojo, and Gojo learns how to use reverse cursed energy at the very last second, right before his death. That eventually, you know, it leads to him being fully healed, and he's kind of cuckoo crazy and looks like he's on that Zaza, can I add. He looks insane. Like he's had one too many bumps of boogie sugar. Don't try it. Don't try it. Drugs are bad, by the way. But he says a line that I think is somewhere along the lines, something along the lines of, like, throughout heaven and earth, I alone am the honored one. And that is a line ripped almost directly from the Buddhist texts from when Buddha reaches his enlightenment the first time. And I think that's enough of, like, a subtle nod to where in chapter 236, when Gojo gets sliced in half and essentially is presumed, quote end quote, like, dead, you know, he is talking to Nanami in the afterlife, or in his little flashback, and Nanami mentions going north or going south, which is pretty cool, I guess. It's kind of a weird thing to just casually drop in as a beloved character is dying, you know. It's one of those things where it's like, okay, it's a weird info dump, like, you're not going to show me a wholesome interaction between these characters, but instead we're going to learn about, like, karmic retribution and the reincarnation cycle. That's a little funky, but I mean, okay. So it kind of goes full circle and makes me think that, you know, maybe that's intentional and it's, like, put there for a reason. Because Nanami talks about going south or going north, and Nanami chose to go south because he was satisfied with what he had accomplished and what he had done in his life. And he talks about how going north is the direction you want to go if you're looking for something new and if you're looking to change. And referencing back to the Buddhist text, there's a scene where Buddha takes 7 steps to the north, and as he takes 7 steps to the north, there are these lotus petals and flowers blooming beneath him with every step that he takes. And at the end of that, he reaches another form of enlightenment, essentially. Kind of off topic, kind of insane sounding, until you realize that the chapter where Gojo is speaking to Nanami about this has one specific panel featuring 7 lotus flowers. Kind of weird, kind of silly, kind of goofy. So that's really interesting that they would talk about going north and then having a panel with just 7 lotus flowers. And because Gojo's he's compared to the Buddha already, I feel like it's not too much of a stretch to assume that maybe this is intentional and that maybe it's kind of hinting towards Gojo's potential and eventual return. I originally thought that it would be much more literal in the sense that Gojo would return after 7 chapters, or for some other reason he would return on different dates. But I guess based off of the pacing of the manga's pacing is kind of insane, for the record. I guess if he were to come back soon, it would have to be sometime in the future, but I just don't know when. It's absolutely insane right now. But I am holding out hope that Gojo will come back, because it just seems like it makes sense, and that way he'll actually be able to mourn Geto's death properly finally, as he mentioned when he was first released from the prison realm. And then, you know, he'll finally be at peace. He'll have accomplished the things that he wanted to accomplish. The only problem is that Gojo is like strong as shit. He's like the strongest motherfucker, or maybe not the strongest, seeing what's happened, but he is one of, if not the strongest sorcerers in the universe, in like the Jujutsu Kaisen verse. So, you know, it's kind of crazy and kind of hard to actually write him into the story without pushing everyone else to the sidelines, which is essentially what happened during that initial fight of Gojo and Sukuna, and then also the Shibuya arc, because Gojo legitimately just had to be sealed away for things to happen in the story, and then the moment he was sealed away, everyone and their fucking mom started dying. So that'll do something. That'll definitely do it, I guess. But yeah, I think he's gonna come back. I think he'll be able to finally answer Geto's question of if he is Gojo Satoru because he's the strongest, or if he's the strongest because he's Gojo Satoru, because that question is kind of silly, goofy, sounds insane, but I think Gojo will be able to find his answer from that. You know, he has to carry the burden of being the strongest all the time, to the point where he can't even really truly show his own emotions because he's scared of seeming weak. And I think if he's able to come back to the story after maybe entering a binding vow or doing something else that, you know, kind of removes part of his ability or nerfs him, essentially, that would be very, very helpful in terms of the character development of all the other characters, the story developments, and also just Gojo as a character, because I would want to see him happy and maybe alive and with his students. I think that'd be wonderful. Yeah, I think that'd be great. He's so freaking tragic. He's just, man, poor guy. I feel horrible for him. But yeah, I think he's gonna come back. I hope he does, and I hope that he can come back as Gojo and not the strongest, the title that he's forced to kind of like carry with him at all times. And I think the reason why I'm pushing so hard towards the idea of Yuji being the one that dies in the end, is because, first of all, Megumi has that whole thing where he told Yuji to save him, and then during one of the most recent manga chapters, there's this theory that the characters are thinking of where they're trying to split Sukuna and Megumi's souls, although they're in the same body. They're trying to split the soul so that they can target just Sukuna and then leave Megumi alive and hopefully partially healthy, you know? Let me hydrate real quick. My freaking heater is on and it is like drying me. I'm like dehydrating by the minute. Actually, I think I might have to pee too. It's on brand. But yeah, I'm gonna go pee real quick, but I'll be right back. I'll literally just be right back. So I'll see you in just a little bit, and we're gonna continue this talk. I didn't think it was possible, but somehow I started breaking out, and I just have like it's like my skin strategically decided to start breaking out today, the day before I have to actually like look pretty and cute and presentable. I just have like just like pimples, like insane. For what reason? What was the reason? So they hate me. They freaking hate me. But yes, where were we? We were talking about Gojo, I think. Oh, we were talking about Gojo and Megumi and how I think because those two are hinted to come back, and my initial first point of Akutami Sensei saying that out of the 4, Gojo, Nobara, Megumi, Yuji, only one will die, or all will die and one will live. It feels like it makes sense for Yuji to die as the sacrifice, considering that there's so many hints so far hinting towards Gojo's return and Megumi's potential return. And because of that, I'm just going to assume by proxy that Nobara has to come back somehow or is memorialized in some way, shape, or form, because otherwise this one theory wouldn't work and it would be the opposite way where Yuji is the only one remaining. I think that is also a pretty plausible ending. I will say that it makes me sad to think of, so I'm gonna pretend that that's not there, and I'm going to just, yeah, I'm just gonna pretend that that's not there, you know? We're not gonna think about that outcome because that's really, really sad. It's so freaking sad. But yeah, I just want to say that's what I think of Jujutsu Kaisen so far. That's what I think is going to happen. I have to say thank you to, first of all, the animation team. They did such a splendid job. Absolutely amazing. Everyone that worked on the instrumental tracks, absolutely crazy, absolutely cracked. And then there's also there's also my friends that are willing to hear me talk about Jujutsu Kaisen like this every single week that something happens. I'm basically like a broken record when it talks about when it comes to like talks about Jujutsu Kaisen. It's absolutely insane. So thank you to friends like Vettel, who stayed up I think like 2 hours to hear me talk about Jujutsu Kaisen. Thank you very much. And also Tommy, thank you very much for listening to me. Shocks, Jeremy, there's so many people that I've subjected to my pain and suffering when it comes to this series, so I just want to say thank you to them for being homies and for sticking it out. I will say that ever since watching and following this series, I think I've gotten quite a bit of inspiration from it, you know? I think it's really inspiring to see how so many people can work so hard together to make such an insane work of art, and just the fact of like everyone's individual efforts being so high quality inspires me so much. I thought that voice acting was pretty interesting. I had a phase during my weeb and otaku phase, I was thinking that voice acting would be a lot of fun and I would want to try it. I've never done it, but I will say that especially after seeing these voice actors in the series that I'm very, very happy about and passionate about and a big fan of, perform so well, it makes me feel more inspired to try voice acting. It seems like so much fun. And, you know, the way that you say certain words and the way that you convey them can have so much emotion in them that it's just absolutely insane. So I really, really want to try voice acting or doing something along the lines of that, because it just seems like it'd be so much fun, you know? So maybe we'll try to do something like that for the year. Maybe that'll be a goal. I don't know if you guys would be interested. But yeah, I don't want to talk about Jujutsu Kaisen for too long. But I do hope that you guys enjoyed this kind of chill info dump segment of NTR. Thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you guys for being here. Make sure you guys drink some water, grab a snack, get up and stretch and walk a couple of circles around your table if you are planning on staying up. If you aren't, I hope you can stay warm and comfy and have lots of sweet dreams. Thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next segment. Thank you so much. Care, bye bye, take care.